to the ongoing golf ball debate that's happening in the world of professional golf then?
No, it's not.
It's not about distance.
No.
Okay.
Right. Okay. I mean, as far as the
That is an anti-segue.
That was good.
It was
Smooth.
we almost got there. And
Okay.
yeah, that wasn't too bad.
I'll
though.
take an 8.5 out of 10.
Yeah.
I don't mind.
Well, that's what happens when you self-mark your tests, kids.
Yeah.
I would not give that an 8.
That's a
but
passing
you know
grade.
what? It got us here. That's the main thing.
Don't worry.
now we're going to talk about the golf ball rules that have come into play.
Much better.
Yes.
Yeah. So this is, and if you haven't heard this news by now, I'd be surprised. But one of the big debates of the last, 5-10 years, pretty much, is the golf ball in the elite area of golf, especially the men's game, is going further and further and further. So the USGA and the R&A, after much deliberation, hand-wringing and committee meetings, have come out and said, we want to roll back the ball so it comes off the club face a lot slower and will put us back to probably like the late 1990s as far as distance is concerned. The reason that they're doing this is they want to try and protect some of our best golf courses, so elite men's competition can still take place on them without them destroying them, basically. This won't apply to amateur golf.
Okay.
It won't apply to recreational golfers, and it won't apply to the women's game either. So what we would have, if this comes in January 2026, is a bifurcation of the rules, which says professional players, professional men, will play with one ball, whilst will play with a different type of golf ball from different manufacturers, I'm still presuming, whilst the rest of us will play with something else. And the reaction has been pretty mixed.
Have you seen anyone who supports it?
A few people, but
Are they very short hitters?
yeah, no. To be honest, that's one of the main criticisms against it, is that if you give a long hitting professional and a short hitting professional a different ball that goes less far, the longer hitter is still going to be further ahead.
Yeah.
So it's an argument which is, it's difficult because generally most golfers, your recreational golfer that make up 99.9% of the world's golfing population, aren't bothered about this.
Yeah.
They want the game to be easier. They want to hit the ball further. They want the clubs to be more forgiving. They want everything to be easier in the game of golf because it's really, really hard, and probably don't care about the elite level men's game anyway. And one of the big benefits, and I've always thought this about golf, one of the best things about it is that I could step onto the same course as an elite player using the same clubs, the same balls, and see how I stack up.
Mm-hmm.
Is one of the best things about it. Now, as soon as you start to split that equipment between the pros and the amateurs, and this is very much the first steps of what could happen in this, it then becomes an unlevel playing field. It becomes not the same game that we've all grown up with.
Yeah.
No, I completely agree with that. I think the point you make about, golf being a sport that I could go and play Ricky Fowler in a match and we could compete against each other in terms of the handicap system as well. In terms of the equipment we use, it's all the same. We could do it if we wanted to. Whereas now you've got a very slim amount of people at the top of the game who are going to be using something completely different to what we're going to use. I think the conversation about distance obviously been going on for quite a while now. Obviously Bryson has dedicated himself for more distance over the last 5 years.
Yeah.
And maybe that's where they've kind of sort of started to have this conversation unravel. I think one of the other big things about golf, and especially the players and the people that are playing it now, is that it's a very different time to 20 years ago. These guys are athletes. These guys are doing things that they weren't doing 20 years ago.
Yeah,
they're in the gym every day.
It's
They're
much,
pumping themselves.
much less recreational now.
Exactly.
In that area of the game than it was.
Yeah.
Back in that time.
I know it's not quite the same kind of thing, but if you I don't know for sure off the top of my head, but if you started to look at like the speeds that people were running recently, or over 100 meters or whatever, take away Usain Bolt, so to speak, but you'd probably be seeing the more into modern times, they'll be getting quicker. So what are they going to do? 100 meters is too short. Let's make it 110 meters because it's getting a bit too short now. Are they running it too fast? It doesn't quite like...
Or they're not allowed to use blocks and they have to have a standing start.
Exactly, yeah. It just doesn't feel quite right, really. And like the fact, like you say, that golf is a game that we could go and play together. We could have a pro come along and play, and we all would feel that we're in the same boat is what makes it so charming to play, I think.
Yeah. I think the only argument, and I'll do what Jacob normally does, which is to devil's advocate,
love it,
kind of play the other side of it, is that the argument for it is exactly what you said, that they're trying to protect the golf courses that these pros now, and I think Sawgrass was a little bit of a example of this, is that there's a hole there where might have been Max Homer drove the green. It was like 320 something to the green, and he just drove the green, and everyone was like, all right, if someone drives the green on a 330-yard hole, that should be exciting. But because of distance now, it's that hole is now much less of a challenge for these guys. So I can understand them wanting to make him hit 2 shots to get to the green by reducing the distance that the ball goes, which is an argument
Yeah, I mean,
to protect the course.
You've got courses. You've got the 13th at Augusta, which they've literally bought land going back from that tee, so they can extend it to make it more of a proper par 5.
Goes back every year, I think.
Yeah, well, it's the one hole that they've almost not moved because it's always been pretty much from that tee. They've moved it back a bit, but this is a big extension. Yeah. It's gone back a long way now. So they're looking to protect that hole. But I think golf is different than almost every other sport because it is played on a different pitch every week. You know, you can think about maybe sports like tennis, so you've got different surfaces. But generally, pretty much every other sport, it has a set definition of the court, of the pitch, of whatever that it's played on.
Yeah.
Golf's very different because the course architects, which designed many of our best venues, you know, we're talking like over a century ago.
Yeah.
They were still using wooden clubs and balls stuffed with feathers.
The 18th at the Old Course is an example.
Yeah.
That's 2 shots to the green to a normal human. In that time.
Yeah, and, you know, let's be honest about this, for many golfers it still is.
Yeah.
But the advance of modern equipment has made it a lot easier for a lot more players to take out a lot of the trouble on these golf courses. So what the RNA and the USGA would say is, you know, we want to try and make sure that these courses don't have to keep extending tees and using up land which they don't have. But I think Jacob's right. You know, the modern golf athlete, the post-Tiger era, if you want to look at it like that, and the revolution that he brought to the game, they are all athletes.
Yeah, it's more than a thing that you do. It's like, you know, on the weekend you go and play golf. It's like, oh, I'm going to now dedicate my entire body and my entire mind and my entire kind of life to hitting this ball more accurately, further, with more control, with more kind of, you know, it has become a very different, you know, like you say, there are kind of elite level athletes, not just people who play golf to a high standard now.
It's just, I think everybody knows that the elite men's game, especially, if you're a 15 handicap bloke, you know that a tour pro is obviously a lot better than you. But I don't think a lot of people appreciate just how much better they are.
Yeah.
Like, they are in a completely different stratosphere to 99.9% of the golfers out there, which makes kind of maybe this change of the ball a little bit pointless because they're going to be that much better anyway.
Yeah, like I saw someone say that, well, they'll just work out how to hit that ball further. Like, they'll just do something to their bodies or their equipment, and they'll get the 20 yards back.
Yeah, so what I was going to say is that, like, you know, companies and brands now are trying to make their drivers the most aerodynamic and all this sort of stuff now. Like, surely a equipment change, as in like something to the irons or the driver, would be a better way to get distance back. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, I mean, it would be much more beneficial and much simpler in many respects if they
100%.
rolled back all the equipment to a point where, again, it's that level playing field between the amateurs and the pros. It just makes it
because
a
I
lot
can
simpler.
go and buy the same driver.
It just makes it simple, because if this rule comes in, and the way it would work is that the USGA and the RNA would adopt this. And bear in mind, this is just a proposal. This isn't something which has been set down just yet.
Right. Okay.
So this is a proposal, what they want to do. If they adopted it, that would mean that the US Open, the US PGA, and the Open Championship would automatically have to adopt this rule. The Masters always usually follow suit, so the 4 majors would be using this rolled back golf ball. Then it would be an option to say the major tour, so PGA Tour, would they adopt the rule?
Yeah.
It's in debate.
DP.
DP World. Live would, I would say probably not, because they'd be like, oh, we're the fun tour, you can do whatever you want.
Yeah.
So it would, at that point in 2026, it would then become a thing.
Yeah.
So it might not even happen.
Right.
And it kind of feels to me that after all this talk and after all this debate about what they're going to do to try and limit distance, whether you agree with that or not, this just feels like a bit of a whiff. It just feels like they could have done so much more. They could have been so much more far-sighted with this. And it's kind of like, well, we're just going to roll back the ball a little bit.
Yeah.
It's just
I looked up the stats on how much yardage has been gained in the last year. So in the last year of golf, what do you think the average yard increase has been for drivers off the tee?
No idea.
7 yards, 6
4 yards.
Right.
So it's an increase, right? People, like you said, people are getting stronger. Their equipment's changing, but over the last 10 years, it's between 10 and 20 yards. So you're setting a specific group of people back a very small amount of time, and is what they're doing enough to affect the game in a way that makes it harder for the pros? I don't think so.
No.
It's also, I think, as well, it kind of like takes away from the skill or diminishes what they're doing in terms of their iron play and their short game. Because it's kind of focusing on saying, oh, well, they're hitting the ball so far, that's why they're doing so much better. But these guys' proximity to the hole, their scrambling abilities, reading putts, putting, is another level from what it was 20 years ago as well.
Yeah.
So what is McIlroy being able to hit his 8-iron 200 yards? Is that not also a problem as well? Because he can't. Do you know what I mean? It's like
I think you've got to be asking yourself the question of what do you want golf to look like?
Yeah.
In not just the elite level, but every level. And what a lot of people say is, it was much more enjoyable. There was much more skill and shot making involved when it was Balata balls, and they were very soft. Like, they just weren't flying as far. You had to shape your way around the golf course. Back in the Persimmon Wood days.
Yeah.
Now, we're never going to go back to that. That's just not going to happen. But modern golf is a different type of skill. I saw this article the other day. This isn't like what I was thinking. Remember Bryson when he was at Bay Hill?
mm-hmm.
And he was bombing it over the water, an angle that no one else was.
Yeah, on
on
6.
6. Yeah.
How exciting was that?
Amazing.
How interesting was that?
yeah, 100%.
It made that game a little bit more entertaining to see the difference in approaches. But, a lot of the modern pros now, because they can launch it high, hit it far as they can. If it goes in the rough, they just gouge it out. That's what this is kind of designed to stop and try and introduce a little bit more skill into the game. But it doesn't go far enough to do that. And
Yeah.
it's just a bit of a... Yeah, it's just a bit of a nothing.
My thinking on it is like, so what if some of these players have to hit less club off the tee? Like, what you're doing is ensuring that they have to hit driver. Like, maybe they do have the level of control with the driver that, the average golfer has with a 7 or an 8 iron. They are elite level players. But maybe they hit 3 iron. Maybe they hit 3 wood instead of having to hit driver off of all of these holes. And then maybe they have to find another way to protect the course. The rough is higher, the bunkers are steeper, the greens are rapid. Like, what we saw this at
Al Hamra.
Yes, at
I
Alhambra.
was literally about to go on.
They literally showed us a map of the course where all of the big hitters were hitting to on the DP World Tour event the previous year, and they said, "Well, we've just narrowed it here, and we've grown the rough up to protect that shot from happening."
Yeah.
And then when you watch the tournament, people were either laying up and playing a longer second shot in, or they were going for it and getting penalised.
Yeah.
So there's ways of protecting these courses, but they do mean changing them slightly.
Yeah.
What else could be done? What else do you think? You don't roll back the ball. Say the ball's the same. We all play the same ball as it is now. What else can happen?
If you really wanted to return it to a level that it was, 30 years ago, you would have to roll back the ball to the extent of being a Bellata type of cover.
Right.
So it literally spanned loads more, and it didn't fly as far. However, you would then have to put more restrictions on the equipment to stop those drivers being even more low spinning,
Yeah.
so that the very top players could adapt and still launch it.
Mm-hmm.
So you'd have to change both. Now that could put us back to a point where golf courses like Sunningdale Old could host like a male professional event again, a top tier one. Yeah, because if they had a PJ Tour event there, DP World Tour event there, they'd rip it apart. It's just too short.
Yeah.
So that could give us back the viewing pleasure of seeing a course like that again. But that's it. Like that's all that would do.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah, that's the bit, isn't it? Is that what are we doing this for?
yeah, I mean that's all that could
Yeah.
possibly happen. That's the only
Do you-
thing that I can think of as a benefit.
Do you think there might be potentially a little bit of they've put this out there and now they're just sort of
just to see what people say about it.
just taking it in and then gone, okay, well, people don't like it,
Okay,
so
we'll take
we'll
that
have
away.
another go.
We'll try
and-
this other one.
Yeah, do you think that's potential? Or do
Maybe
you
they've
think,
offered us this, right? And we've all gone, terrible idea.
As
They're
in
going to
there
offer
becomes
us
something else.
They're
so
going to
like,
offer us something slightly less bad, but still bad, and we'll go, okay, well, it's not as bad as
here's
the
a
ball
tin of
rollback
Heinz
idea.
beans,
was
but
it?
here's some Branston beans.
Oh my God, we're back on the
God's
beans.
sake.
I saw an interesting one about tour pros all playing the same ball. Like there's a tour ball,
Yeah.
and all the tour pros have to play that ball like I don't know what example there is of that, but in the Premier League, there is a
The
Premier League
ball.
version of the ball,
Yeah.
and all the tour pros have to play with the ball from that, and then but it does take away the sponsorship, I
Yeah,
guess,
it's
on the ball.
Just, yeah.
Well, this tour pro event sponsored by
Yeah,
the Callaway ball.
It would have to be have to be a complete
Yeah.
restructuring of like tour and sponsorships and
They
everything.
just
Yeah.
pull it out of a
Yeah.
bag at
Yeah.
the beginning on the first tee. Just
They're like, oh,
DP5.
precept.
Oh yeah, get the preset 00.
There's
back.
one in there,
But yeah, I don't think that happened. That's the convoluted thing. Again, it's such a different sport. Like Nike, Umbro, whatever can buy the rights to provide the ball for like the Premier League or the World Cup or whatever it be. That just doesn't work the same in golf.
No.
Yeah.
So it is a completely different landscape.
They should just play Bay Hill for every week on the PGA Tour, and then it'll be fine.
Yeah,
then it'll be fine. Then
may-
it'll be close competition and stuff like that.
Yeah, I was going to say,
That's-
like, maybe some of these courses just aren't up to it anymore. Then.
yeah, that's
Maybe
what-
they're hitting the ball too
Yeah.
far, and that's fine. And
Yeah.
maybe you don't go to some of these courses, and Augusta, you still play Augusta, the Masters at Augusta, because it's the kind of the place where it happens, and they tear the course up. Maybe that par 5 becomes a par 4, and it goes down to a par 71 instead. Like maybe they have to alter their perception of what a par 3 is. Maybe the par 3 is actually now 220 yards and onwards because of these guys are hitting it so far. Like maybe that's, a par 68 becomes normal now. And then under par is really impressive because it used to be a par 72 a couple of years ago.
Yeah, I suppose. I don't know. I think if they're going to do something, they need to go at it hard.
Yeah.
They need to go at it hard enough that everybody's involved from all levels of the game, both men and women, amateur, pro. Everyone's playing the same stuff. And like some of the biggest kickback has obviously been from golf companies. They've got no interest in.
Oh, you mean we have to make another special product that we have to research and spend millions of pounds making?
Yeah.
Exactly. So and then
Absurd.
it doesn't make any sense. But for them, to be honest, for equipment companies, if the governing body turned around and said, right, we're rolling back the drivers, so the ball's got to come off, on our test, it's got to come off 10 miles an hour slower. The ball's got to spin 2,000 revs more on a drive, whatever it's going to be, exaggerating stuff. It would almost, I think, be a benefit to equipment manufacturers if they did that, because then they could start this whole process of creating golf clubs again with a new set of rules. Because everybody knows that drivers at this moment, they're pushing right up against the limit.
Yeah.
If there are gains every year that we've seen over the last couple of years, the gains have been minimal apart from, I would say, forgiveness off the face.
I was going to say, like, dispersion slightly.
Yeah. So a lot of companies now are managing to make drivers which are lower spinning, but also they're increasing the forgiveness of those drivers.
Yeah.
From across the face. So they've been having advancements in that area. But if all the rules were changed, they could actually work towards creating something completely different.
Yeah.
And then if the drivers went, 30 yards less distance, they could then start the process of going, well, this driver goes another 5 yards further. Start building it back up.
Yeah.
Yeah. Do you want those 2023 Bryson numbers?
Yeah.
We've got it for you in 2028.
Yeah. I think the big change would need to be equipment based. I don't, and not
Club-
the ball.
club
It needs
based.
to be club based. I think that is the only way they're gonna actually properly do this.